All right, all right. Greetings and salutations. It's Pops, and we're going to do it. Have a great guest. Captain Trek is on with us. He is the host of Morning Brew and a great YouTuber that you need to be checking out. We'll have links here. I got this link pinned up there for you, folks. Make sure you subscribe and check out all the stuff that Captain Trek's done. Man, thank you so much for hopping in with me, man. Spend time.
Oh, you're welcome.
You
I
know,
do want to let people know about one thing I've got going on right now.
all right.
Um, I have two Blu-rays to give away. Once I reach 700 subscribers, I'm like 25 away from where I need to be uh, in order to give me a little bit of a buffer for the 700 subscriber giveaway. They are Star Trek, The Undiscovered Country. So Star Trek 6, The Undiscovered Country,
Yeah.
and Star Trek First Contact.
Okay. All right. All right, folks. You got to be. Got to get yourself on the list. Get yourself in the running for those free giveaways. You know, it's funny you mentioned Undiscovered Country. I'm pretty sure that's the one where uh, Kirk and Bones are held captive for the Klingon trial and sent to the frozen planet, right?
Correct.
I love the line about about venturing outside, and he just says, "There's no beaming, no beaming." And I always thought to myself, that's the answer in my mind to someone who's not a big fan of the prison system and the death penalties. Like, we just need to build a base in the middle of nowhere in Alaska, and it's just no beaming. It's just called no beaming, and because I love that element of that movie. I'm not sure I love the whole movie as a whole. It's the parts of it I really do enjoy, but
Mm-hmm.
hey, listen, folks will come in and out of here. We'll say hi to Ryan real quick. He's been really, really big supporter of mine here recently. Hey, Ryan, hope you're doing well. Before I get too far away from it, Cap, let's talk a little bit about how you ended up down the venture of being a YouTuber. How did you even come about doing all this? I think it's insightful for folks who kind of want to learn more, get their feet going more, doing live stream, doing a regular show, all that, because you kind of have a big, broad umbrella.
Yes. Well, basically, what happened was it all started actually in 2018 when I had to have surgery. And after that, I was bored in the hospital. So I looked up Star Trek
Hmm.
and I found, oh, there are people that are doing videos. Cool. I'll look them up. Then all of a sudden, there were live streams. And I started hopping into live streams. And then this, of course, was under my real name.
Okay.
And so then it's like, nah, I don't want that out there. I'm gonna just so I you know went to Captain Trek. I had a couple different people. Actually, I first went to Trek 95 is what it was,
Okay.
and then I had a couple of people call me Captain, and it's like, hmm, Captain Trek. Okay, that's it.
It's so clever and obvious. I'm shocked that it wasn't already taken. See, I can't hide because my real persona has been out there for so long. It's just silly with the footprint. But I can hide because there's so many other people named Brandon Jones that you Google me, I won't come up because there's been like 5 different athletes that have come and gone. There's college players. It's funny because whenever I try to put in tags on a video or something like that, it always come up as like Brandon Jones highlights. I'm like, well, that's not me, but that's a nice, fun, free tag. Thank you for that. So. Uh, all right, so you're gonna take on the persona of Captain Trek. Let's say hi to the lovely Sherry. Thanks for hopping in there with Ryan, watching our show tonight. Um, take on the persona of Captain Trek. How do you sort of develop or create your sort of outline and skeleton of the show and how you want to put things together?
Well, initially, there were a lot of people that were coming on because we were in the midst of all the stuff that's going on or was going on at the time. Um, and I was just having a open panel discussion. It was
Mhm.
kind of a let's just say a cheers of YouTube,
Okay.
where people would come on. We would have a discussion on different topics, and we still do that on Fridays. Um, where I put the link in the chat and people come on. We'll talk about different topics: Star Trek, Star Wars, many different fandoms. I'm I'm not a Whovian. I do like the Second Doctor, but there have been several of the streams that have been Doctor Who oriented.
Hmm.
So even though I'm not a particular fan, I was able to enjoy, ask questions, you know, get some understanding of that fandom, um, and the whole point for me is listening.
Hmm.
You know, you have to listen. You have to actually have a real conversation, and that was the initial point of having Morning Brew.
Yeah, it's great. I've enjoyed so many different YouTubers and just sort of getting in people's chats, getting to know folks, the structure of their shows, and I just enjoy just to hang out, man. It's like the nerd stuff. I'll catch myself going to the shop. I'm going to grab one little quick thing, and if it's not busy and the owner wants to strike up a conversation, next thing I know, I've blown 15, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. I'm like, I got to go. I'm going to get in trouble. But that's the nerdiness that we all love to do. Just talk about stuff, learn from one another, find different things. It's like, oh, I didn't know about this. And I'm with you. I'm not a Whovian at all. And I've got just casual knowledge. It would be unfair for me to have a favorite doctor because beyond Matt Smith and David Tennant, what I've digested is very small, and it's almost like unfair to even have an opinion. But like you, I'd love to have a person on to just talk about it from a very 101 level. Like I've obviously I hear Gary from Neurotics and other folks talk about it regularly, and I'm like, I kind of got it, and I get the outrage elements of the new female doctor and that kind of stuff because it's affecting all of different franchises. So that's kind of where my passion lies. I really just enjoyed that concept for me, this because I think that's really the culture war. The culture war is you're destroying the past, and we're moving into a different place. So how long have you been doing Morning Brew? How long has it been now?
Well, I started it in late 2020.
All right, 2 years. We're rocking and rolling. So we're going to be doing it. All right, 700, getting close to 700 subscribers, folks. Cap mentioned he's got a giveaway, so make sure you're on that list. You are subscribed, getting the run in there to get a couple of great movies from the Trek library. You don't want to miss out on that. So that's awesome, man. It's great. And I'd really just enjoy the open door and letting people come in and do the open line thing. That's always fun, isn't it? I just love it.
Absolutely. There have been a couple of people I've had to kind of curtail some.
Sure.
Because and granted, I don't want to eliminate topics, but some people get into some things that I'm not a big political person. And a lot of things, you'll get people that are on one side or another, and it gets into argument territory, and it's like, no. This is about fun. This isn't about having arguments
right.
over your political stance. And so those people, I've dealt with them off stream.
Yeah, I think that's the appropriate way to handle it. You want to do the best you can to keep control of your content and your show. I came from more of a radio background, so for the most part, we had a producer who would screen calls, but I have been part of shows where there's not. It's completely wide open. You get crazy stuff that people will try to do just so they can hear themselves on air and stuff like that. But you know what?
Let me guess. Half the time it was like, turn off your radio, please.
Oh no, I'm talking about people. As soon as you pick the phone up, hi, you've reached. Hey, this is 13:13 in the afternoon. What's your question? And you're like, I want to say it. It's just some sort of crazy or F your mom. It's like, oh God, please, dude. So you have to be a delay. So stuff just getting beeped, and it really is. I love the open line spontaneity of it all, but it is a little bit challenging. And I reached out to someone here recently. It's like, because I'm always like, how do I think ahead 5 steps from now? I'm already thinking about super chats and managing content and chat, because I really hate the fact that some of the bigger channels, if you don't want to pay, they're not going to read what you type in. And I feel that's kind of a weird thing, because most people in chat are just communicating as they're talking to the hosts who are not reading your stuff. It's kind of a weird, the shows can get too big, and I would never want to be that way. I'd want to figure out how to do a balance there, even if I had to do a whole second show, kind of what they are calling their super chat catch-ups, because they have so many super chats. I'm like, oh man, so just the connectivity to the audience, the connectivity to the fans is so great. And the fact that you have an open line opportunity on Fridays, folks, is just a really cool thing to just kind of, go and chill out and hang out with other people who are like minded.
And there are times I'll go ahead and, let's say the lovely Sherry is talking to Ryan. I will not necessarily read that conversation because it's like, hi Sherry, hi Ryan. Da, 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 da. No,
Right. They're going back and forth with each other. That's not really meant for the show. Yeah, no, I agree with that. That makes sense. So what is, and obviously you mentioned your giveaway. You're right on the heels of 700. I'm actually pretty close to you too. I think I'm in the six something. I don't know. I only look like once a week. I just make sure the graph's headed in the right direction. If I'm going to be, is it relatively proportional? Because I haven't done it consistently enough to have like good month to month, year over year data of any significance. I've only really been kind of back at it here recently. So until I have more data, I don't obsess over anything.
No. In fact, that's the worst thing you can do is obsess.
I don't. And for me, again, so I have a radio background. So I have people who've worked with me and for me and all sorts of stuff back when I was writing for websites and radio work. And now some of them are in different countries. And so my data is all over the map. It can just be, I can have wake up and there'll be 2 views. And then like 6 hours later, it's 400. And then, it'll be dead. That's it. It's over. I don't know if somebody shared it. I don't know if something did whatever. Lovely Sherry says you are at 680. You are in the home stretch, man. 20 away. 20 away. Yep. That's so awesome. So you have that sort of schedule and that sort of plan. How do you manage your content? Are you a writer, or are you just kind of like, oh, we're just going to ad lib some of this? You have different guests on, that kind of thing. So you have a lot of moving parts. Some people have a very different kinds of structures. You seem like you're doing like 3 or 4 different types all at the same time now.
Absolutely. When I'm having a one-on-one guest, I'll usually have a few questions already in mind. And then based on what we're talking about, sometimes most of it's ad lib. Obviously I'll start asking their background in YouTube. Had much as you did.
Mm-hmm.
And then we'll go from there.
Yeah.
And it's interesting how we can have a conversation just based on a couple different questions. And that's one thing I absolutely loved when I first started doing the Morning Brew, is getting to know so many different people.
Yeah.
There would be people that, and the funny thing is, and I'll tell you this because people need to know, you never know who's in your chat.
Sure.
You never know who's in your chat. I've had people who wrote me. It's like, oh, I heard you talking about this today. Huh? You were listening?
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Like, what?
No, I've heard, I actually can tell you right now that I've learned that the hard way, because my wife will say, I heard you say this. And I'm like, uh-oh, I'm in trouble. She's a much, we try to run a PG-13 approach to the show, to my channel and my work. I'm a person of faith. I'm not shy about that, but I'm also not judgmental or going around trying to smack people around. And she seems to be a lot harder on me. Like, I need to be a better example. So she's the first lady is my first and best critic, and I love her for it. She makes me a better person each and every day. And it'd be remiss if I didn't try to transition into Star Trek conversations, since I have you on, and I will pretend to be. So here's my thing. I just recently watched Wrath of Khan again, because I consider 1982 to be the best movie year for me ever, because that was like, I'm a teenager, I'm 12, I get all these great movies. Wrath of Khan is by far the best. And what was weird is I had to watch it digitally. I wasn't where I could watch a physical copy, so I didn't have it in front of me. So I digitally didn't even own the right version or something. I don't know what I had. I'm like, what's this weird? So I had to buy it again and watch it digitally. Just did this like a few weeks ago. And I tell you what, man, I love it just as much today as I did then. My mom is the Trekkie. My mom, every afternoon, we had, after school time, you could play outside, watch your cartoons, whatever. Trek came on at 5. And we were hell or high water watching Star Trek at 5. Mom was Trekkie. So I've watched a lot more of it. And it's a funny thing where I I'm not going to pretend that I have recall of Star Trek episodes, but when I watch it, I'm like, oh, yeah, this is the one where this happens, or this is the one where that happens. It's like association rather
Right.
than like off the top of my head. What's it feel like for you? I mean, I don't know how old you are, but where's your Trek theater experience, and how did that influence your passion for the franchise?
Well, the funny thing was, I was, when I was first watching Star Trek, I was at a babysitter's house. This was, it was in reruns, of course, and it came on right after school, about a half hour or so after school. Got there, and there was a rule: you had to take a nap after school, or watch Star Trek.
Oh, that's an easy choice, man. That's easy. If they made you watch, if it was nap or soap opera, I'd be sleeping. But nap and Trek all day.
At that point, the first time, it's like, well, I don't know what it is, but okay, better than a nap. And then, of course, after that, it's like, yeah, Star Trek. There wasn't even a question.
You had a cool babysitter. Just so we're clear, you had a really cool babysitter.
Absolutely. Awesome. After about a week, she didn't even ask.
That's great. That is so awesome.
That's really where I first got my first taste of Star Trek and love of the franchise. And since then, it's just grown.
Sure.
Until recently, of course. But
yeah, Wrath of Khan was the first one I saw in the theater. I do remember a lot about. I have sort of like that. I'm getting older, so I have this vague memory of the motion picture. So I don't really remember seeing it in the theater, but back then, the dollar theater stuff existed. So it would have been like the next year. It would have been in the dollar theaters. So I think that's probably more likely where I saw a motion picture. But Wrath of Khan was an event, and Mom knew about what happened to Spock. And we were there like from the get-go. Mom had to be a part of it. So I remember seeing that. And to this day, it's just, I go right back to that place. It's just so awesome. So the other ones, the joke was right for many years, right? It's the every other movie. So it was the even ones were good and the odd ones were not. And it's kind of like, well, there are parts of all of it. I think, there's pros and cons. How do you sort of like, I don't want to say rank, but how do you sort of place, some of them for you?
Well, okay. For example, for me, Wrath of Khan, The Search for Spock, and The Voyage Home is a trilogy.
Yeah, right.
I mean, it's it's a complete story, and yeah, 1 and 5 are not as good as the rest, but they're still better than modern Star Trek. And
we'll get to modern Star Trek because
I've yet to see the director's cut, which I want to see of the motion picture, the new director's cut that's come out. I want to see that because I've seen the trailers for it, and it's like, holy crap, that looks much better than it did way back when.
Sure. Yeah, Ryan says Star Trek 1966 to 2005. A lot of folks agree with you, Ryan. A lot of folks agree with you. And again, not being a Trekkie and having an affinity and dabbling with. So even with Next Generation, for me, I remember watching it and being a fan of it to a certain extent. But again, no recall. If you ask me like a favorite episode, I got nothing. I can kind of describe certain moments that I would consider favorites, but Next Gen did such a good job because to me, it flipped the narrative where you had sort of like Captain Kirk, the warrior, and they're trying to like create peace and prosperity and diplomacy. And then when you go to Next Generation, it was so great because it's almost like you had this quiet, perfect stereotype of like, I almost said bureaucrat. I mean, diplomat, I guess. I kind of repeated the same word, but a diplomat in these like terrible conflicts. And I thought it was such a great, that's a very broad generalization. And if you can correct me if I'm totally off base, but that's how I always saw it. So I always felt like it was such a great like a companion. It made like such a great companion series because they just added to each other. They
Right.
complemented each other so much. But then we fast forward beyond that, and we start to end into sort of like, for me, a lot of Wild Wild West stuff that didn't make sense. It didn't add up. And the new stuff, the brand new stuff, I'm like, no, I'm no part of any of that. So you can kind of take me through where I'm off base with the original sort of OG and TNG, and then before we get to the brand new stuff, you can kind of break down what your thoughts on some of that is.
Well, excuse me. With the original series, I like the fact that it was, you had these episodes which told complete stories. They were so well written. You had this feeling like you were a part of this universe that just, it felt real.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like
Yeah.
the episode where they encounter Abraham Lincoln. You can imagine Abe Lincoln actually being there, even though
Right.
you know in your mind this is an actor. It's not actually Abe Lincoln. But you could, you know, the way it's written, this is how Abe Lincoln would have behaved. Is you know
True.
what it comes across as, where there's thought and development. Things were thought out, planned out. Um, you know, and when something happened, it was just, you know, they remembered. They kept notes. They, you know, it continued on.
Right.
And it was done much the same way in the other Trek series that are, you know, 2005 it would be the end of it. But as far as, because obviously the first episode of Next Generation, you had McCoy in there, and he was actually the tie-in between the two series.
Right. The bridge. Yep.
The bridge, yeah. And it was so, I don't know. I don't want to say exciting, but
it was like passing of a baton, right?
Yes,
McCoy
it
got
was.
to be McCoy got to be the one to pass the baton, and I want to touch on the history elements because I think for me, and again, I was very young during some of this time as well. It made me curious about Abraham Lincoln. It made me curious about the Wild West. It made me curious about some of the stuff they would touch on. There's the crime story of where like they're toting Tommy guns, and you're like, it just made me curious. And I think that some of that's been lost. We've replaced curiosity and interesting narrative with agenda and the message, to quote Critical Drinker.
Mm-hmm.
So you agree, like the passing of the baton kind of helped tie it all together into like almost like a bigger franchise instead of it being two completely separate universes.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. And the fact that they had respect for it.
Sure.
You had Spock on, you had Scotty on. It was, you had a feeling that this was still, even though things changed, they were still the same. It was still Star Trek. It was still Starfleet. Yeah,
Right.
there were things that changed over the years. Of course, everything changes over the years. And I think that's necessary. There are, and I know we're going to get into this a little bit more later, but
Mm-hmm.
but there are people that will tell me, well, you don't like the new stuff because you don't like change. No, I love change. I would love to see, and see that's the other thing. One of the other things that they're not changing anything except
Right.
what has already happened.
Yep.
Retelling old stories.
Yeah, Ryan says, in my view, Star Trek was believable sci-fi. Amen to that, brother. Something that humanity could reach, something that could inspire us, and that was until 2009 onwards. Yeah, and I agree with that so much, that sentiment, Ryan, because I always felt that as I got older and was rewatching a lot of it, and I've rewatched it, here, as an adult and a bigger fan now, you see a lot more of the depth in the writing of the original series and TNG and some of that kind of stuff. And it does. It does. It definitely always felt like we could be on a path where we could kind of behave this way and try to express this morals and good intentions and we can come together and try to figure out how to overcome hurdles and have different opinions and treat everyone equal. And so let's transition a little bit to what you and Ryan are both alluding to here, the 2005 to 2009 window when things started to kind of like go off the tracks. Does it go off the tracks immediately after TNG, or what are your thoughts on how things sort of diverge?
Well, after TNG, things just kind of developed. You went into DS9, which was totally different because obviously it was on a space station. You didn't have a starship there to begin with. The Defiant didn't come into the picture until later. So, you were basically, with the exception of the shuttlecraft, excuse me, you didn't have any. It was everything took place on the station. Things were coming to the station. And that was different. There were people that didn't like that. They wanted a starship. Well, they got it finally. But one of the things with DS9, it actually started off strong because it had a lot of its base laid out from TNG.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then you went on to Voyager, which was basically, in my opinion, a better retelling of the original series.
Mm-hmm.
They were out in the middle of nowhere where, I can imagine some of the things Kirk and Spock wouldn't have done, but some of the things they would have. And the adventures are coming back home. But after that, even though I liked Enterprise, I would say that's really where it started to go off until towards the end.
Right.
Really, seasons 3 and 4 were really where it started feeling more like Star Trek again.
Does any of this correlate to Roddenberry's passing?
Roddenberry passed during TNG.
Okay, so it's pretty early on. So the impact on Deep Space Nine and Voyager, it was still like they were still carrying the water properly and still paying reasonable homage to the old material. And I agree with some of that. I didn't see a lot of that either, but I agree with that too. The sentiment wasn't lost. People would have different fan favorites and things like that. What happens when we get into this new stuff with Discovery and now Picard and all? The stuff that happens now, I almost feel like I'm being trolled. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me! Like, I just feel like, and again, I'm feeling for the Trek fans. I'm like, you're just being trolled.
Well, there was something that I happened to see on Twitter today. If the writing, people are so focused on, well, who's acting in this, who's doing this, and they're more interested in knowing who is hired to write, because if you've got a good writer, you can make any actor better based on good material.
Right.
If they can act, you can help them act better. But if you don't give them good material,
right,
they can only go so far.
Sure. Yeah. Ryan's very active in our chat. He's saying, in my view, TNG and Deep Space Nine was great. Voyager was good. Enterprise was average. Star Trek needed a break by 2005, but Enterprise is way better than Discovery and Picard. It should not have been canceled. So, yeah, and it's funny how now we're in streaming. So I think that, and I don't even know who to give credit to first when they came up with the concept that these streaming services are just content for the sake of content. I don't know if Paramount's just mimicking Disney in that way or what. It just seems very cheap to me. it just the inexperienced writers that you were talking about. They're hiring people. I don't know. Do the Trek writers have? Because when so let me back up and say, when I did the full breakdown of Loki, because obviously that was the one. I know WandaVision had come and gone. People, had mixed feelings about some of it. I didn't think it went off the rails until the end, where you had the last couple episodes with Agatha and whatever. But when Loki, it was garbage to me from day one. Like I was like, this is a mess. And I did a deep dive where I was like, these writers have no credits, no credentials, and they're getting like this massive job. Is part of the problem that Paramount just went on the cheap with the writing staff, or is it just the message? I mean, I don't know.
A lot of it is, if you look into the writers, they, again, as you said, they have no writing credits. They have, or the ones they do have, they worked on a soap opera, or they worked on NCIS or whatever.
Yeah, like one episode. Like Loki was like 2 episodes of Rick and Morty, and they get a Marvel job. You're like, you gotta be what? Like that doesn't make sense. So yeah, they hire soap writers to write Trek. That just I don't know. Ooh-wee.
And anyone who actually said they liked Star Trek, don't know. You're not involved. Go away.
Wow. Well, some of them are coming out and admitting that truth, right? We had the I don't know all their names. They're to me they're interchangeable, so it doesn't really matter, right? So you have the one that got the Star Wars gig, and she admitted that she had writers that hadn't even seen the original trilogy. You have Jack Schaefer, I think is the name, where she was like, I didn't even know who Mephisto was, so I started doing press. But that's basically the basis of the story that we told. She didn't even know who Mephisto was. So obviously, when all the fans were thinking all these crazy theories, she didn't. So it's permeating all of pop culture. Where basically, it's like we're all getting in the same lifeboats. It's like every franchise. All right, come on, folks. There's room for the Trek folks. Come on in. Now it's gonna be your turn. And now it's like okay, because now we're moving on to the Halo. I've been covering Halo with Stone Loki and Ryan some, and now we got Ironcaster in the mix. We're just like piling on the Halo, train wreck. And it seems like Trek was so ahead of the curve with this in some ways. I'm trying to figure out the chicken and the egg of who's copying who here.
Well, it was funny because there were people, the 2009 movie and then Beyond and whatever came out. And I'm going, oh Lord. I did see 2009, by the way. I couldn't stand it. I didn't see the other two.
Okay. So 2009 is the one you're referring to, the first one, just called Star Trek. This is the Chris Pine, Zachary Quinto, and all that. Okay, gotcha. I'm following.
I couldn't stand it. It's like it was too flashy, too many. What do they call those things?
Well, the CGI stuff was just so overwhelming for me. I got to be honest. I saw it. I didn't hate it, but I felt like the time travel storyline stuff was just a cheat. I just couldn't stand that. I'm like, you're just cheating. And then I've ranted and raved about the second one, the whole Wrath of Khan lie that came out of J.J. Abrams' mouth. I'll never forgive him because I was like literally writing pop culture Google News for websites, and I remember writing that story. Remember we had screenshots that were getting leaked about Klingons on set, and he's just bold-faced lying about everything, and then he bold-faced lied about Khan, and I'm like, if you had just been honest, we wouldn't have gone into this with a different perspective. We would have been more excited to at least give you a chance to create a new. And actually, I think if they had used the terms like multiverse and stuff back then, some fans, again, I'm not saying diehard Star Trek fans, but some would have been at least, okay, this isn't really canon. This is like its own little universe. All right, well, we can just go along for the ride and have Star Trek for the sake of having it.
And if they had come out and said, okay, this is a different universe.
Right.
Completely different universe. We're not even okay. But that was not exactly. It was alluded to.
Right, but it wasn't the fact because they had the Spock overlay, right? So it wouldn't have been true anyway. Yeah.
But it's like, okay, I could deal with that. But anyhow, they had that, and then it's like, oh, he's going to be going to do Star Wars, and it's like, oh shit. Not Star Wars next. No, and people were going, yeah, he's gonna make Star Wars good. And I'm going, oh Lord, no, please don't let him do this.
I know.
people were all excited. I'm going, no, 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 this is going to be garbage. And I believe I'm correct. I think it's called garbage.
Oh, and I remember having this with my son coming out of after last because he checked out at Last Jedi like immediately was done, and I was like, again I saw it in a critic screening and there was no applause, there's no sound, no one really claps or it was just weird. I kind of felt like, what did I just see? Like I'm so confused. I have all of these things that they're introducing and they're doing that have never been done before. I don't understand. And I remember my take was because we had one more movie to go, and I kept going, surely they have a plan. It's $1 billion on the line here. We have $1 billion. Surely there's a plan. Like, and I used to fan fiction this with my son because he's like, oh no, you can't save it. I said, well, what if we did this? He's like, all right, well that wouldn't be too bad. Well, what if we did this? Oh, it wouldn't be too bad. So I was always fan fictioning with him because I had faith, I had hope that there was a plan. There was no freaking plan. There's no freaking plan whatsoever. And I don't feel like there was a freaking plan when it came to track. It's just been like one bad writer diarrhea moments in a room somewhere with a whole bunch of writers named Jason. That's how I feel right now.
Well, unfortunately, using the diarrhea thing, it's like the script writers were almost like that, throwing it at the wall if it stuck.
Yeah.
It was a great idea.
Yeah. Jeez. Sorry, man. R.I.P. track, because I can definitely understand the pain going through the Star Wars stuff for me, because it's just now I always get the name of the word. I should probably learn the proper German word. It's called Schadenfreude, where you just hate watching. You know, it's almost like the car crash, can't look away. That's how a lot of the stuff is for me. And also just being kind of a bridge to the normies. I feel like I'm a good bridge to most of the normies. I too hard for that. So, how do you handle and sort of like transition into the new track? How do you cover a lot of the new track, or you just have your rants and raves and kind of move on, or you just like I'm done?
I have watched. I've not really covered a lot of it. I'm. That's the other thing I'm going to start doing that I hadn't done. I'm working with another channel. They're doing Picard season 1, and we're reacting to it. And I thought, you know what? It's about time I do that. And so I am going to start having some watch parties where I'm actually, it's more of a watch along type thing where people will be able to watch, but it's going to be, it's not going to be on the screen. I'm not that brazen. Nor do I have the technology to do it.
Like this knucklehead did last night on Halo, where I got copyright struck like 16 times because I was playing. Because it was so bad and we're talking over it, but they would still strike it. And then the stream stopped working on and off. I was like, all right, well, that's a learning experience. And I realized that, I am probably ticking off Paramount. I'm not going to get a screener for a Paramount thing anytime soon. So, well, there we go. That's probably part of it. But, it's how they behave like children anyway. I'm not shocked or surprised. So,
no.
People have to know that this stuff runs. Everything is so like-minded in this whole community, like movie reviewers, critics, the newspaper people. They're no different than the Hollywood people. They are treated like, so if the guy works for the newspaper or he works for the radio show, or he works for the TV, they're treated like here. And then it's kind of like a tiered system of who you work for, what you do. And they just think that their bowel movements don't stink and they can do no wrong. And if your reviews are different than theirs, they don't even know how to process you. They don't even know how to process you. So I can imagine some of the backlash that you must have been getting by like, okay, Trek is obviously in my name. This is my brand. This stuff is crap. The backlash must have been crazy.
It was, to say the least. There were people that were absolutely supportive of that.
That's good.
When I speak out against it, there are a few people that have gone, well, if you don't like it, don't talk about it. Well, if you don't like it, don't watch. I mean, there's tons of content out there on YouTube.
Yeah.
And there are people, believe it or not, that will hate watch YouTubers.
Oh, I think I found a lot more of that before I found this really cool live streamer, pop culture genre YouTube niche. before I found that. And then of course now I've learned like there's whole like the millionaires, right? Like what Hassan Piker, like just these guys are just watching other people's stuff for hours on end and not even doing anything. And I was like, I don't understand what happened with YouTube. This is a complete, and again, for me, the pendulum has swung all over the map so many times with different channels, different things that I've been a part of. Now I'm just like, well, here we go. But I just, again, maybe it's the gray hair that we have. We can handle having conversations with people that we don't agree with. And yet that seems to be something that's off limits now. I have one of my other thesis is we live in a society where you're not supposed to have two thoughts at the same time. And obviously I deal with more political topics when that first was developed for me. It's like we can't say two things. You can't say, well, this person was evil for doing that. And by the way, there's no good guys to support in this conflict. So I don't know what to say about it. You're not allowed to have two things. If you say one, it contradicts the other. So it's like picking teams. If two teams, let's say two basketball teams are playing for the championship and you don't really care, you're not allowed to do that. You're not, you have to pick a team. I don't want to pick a team. I don't care. No, we're going to the game. You have to pick a team. Or I could just have a snack and watch the game and have a good time watching the game and hanging out with you. No, you have to pick a team. Oh, for love of freaking Pete. That's how everything is. Everything is like that. Everything. Captain Trek, you have to like this if I like this. You have to. I like it. So if you don't like it, something's wrong with my analysis. Or
something's wrong with you.
Yeah.
Because you didn't like it.
Let's talk about it. Yeah. What didn't you like? And I always find things. I will say that some people exaggerate what they don't like to hate on it, and they exaggerate things they like to like it more. All of that is okay. There's no perfect formula. Who cares?
No. The funny thing is, I'll be watching Star Trek, the original series, or any of the other series, and I'll be sitting there watching and going, "Oh," and I can nitpick that. I can nitpick. Oh, sure. That shouldn't be going on there. Nah, that's too early in the series for that. What's going on? But I'm having fun. I'm having fun while nitpicking, as opposed to the other stuff where I'm going, oh God, what?
Yeah,
they did what?
Yeah, nitpicking is one thing. So, like, for instance, when we were covering Halo 1, I kept asking Loki very specific video game questions. Like, they didn't have any respect for the armor. So the armor is basically just an amalgam of 2 or 3 different games. Then there's like a termination code where it's like you have to kill so-and-so, and there's a termination code that pops up on the screen in his helmet. That's all made up too. And I'm just like, okay, hold on a minute. They have such little respect for these franchises that the nitpicking becomes a bigger issue because you don't care. You don't care. And if we don't have respect for the bigger issues or the small issues, I don't know what the heck we have left. And that's kind of where the Trek franchise has gotten to, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's not just Trek either.
Well, it's all the franchise, but we're talking specifically about Trek right now. But this is the poison's in the water for all of the franchises. Like, I'm not sure what safe. We've talked about, and I'll get to that later on with you, like what franchises are next. Because if you have a love of a franchise that has not been made into anything, pray right now. You got at least 5 years. Just pray for at least 5 years. We'll have some hope. And I do think that some of the fighting that's taking place may give us some hope. Let me get to Ryan real quick before we leave Trek as a topic. He says he loves politics. One of the reasons I like Star Trek and the space battles. But yeah, you know what? To Trek's credit, as a Star Wars nerd, Trek was definitely more political and more interesting in a lot of ways because of that. Especially some of the movie stuff that are not very good. Like some of the stuff that's in some of the movies that are considered the weaker movies, some of the political stuff that's in it makes me think more. It made me think a lot more about politics and stuff. Because back then I didn't really care about politics. That was much more later in life. But at least when some of those movies were happening, I remember even seeing, Final Frontier and stuff. There's stuff in there. I'm like, oh, I didn't really think about that. I didn't really think about that. It was at least thought provoking.
Well, that's the other thing. The political aspects that are in there are not the in your face, this is right, this, if you don't believe this, you're wrong, right, type of thing. You the viewer had to decide who's right, who's wrong. Is there a side? Or are these just you know, two sides of the same coin that they need to figure out a way to get along.
Yeah, let me ask you about that because that's always one of my theses too about next generation. Because again, I find it so fascinating. I always thought to myself, this is where the left gets it wrong. The political left gets it wrong. Worf would disagree with the plan, and he'd want to be like authoritarian, or he'd want to be volatile or violent or retaliatory, and that would be like, no, we're not doing that. But instead of like shooting the captain and taking control of the ship, which is pretty much the message that you get in like modern filmmaking, he learned how to deal with it, how you deal with disagreement. He understood chain of command. He understood compromise. And he was also learning like, well, listen, man, there are more than one answers than just violence. I mean, there's more than one answer to this problem. And we were living vicariously through two or three different scenarios most of the time. And I think that was really the brilliance of Trek over the long haul, is these different philosophies and conflicts that they were resolving. We're feeling as the audience, you're connecting with someone, and that's usually different for different people, and we're seeing different problem solving, different what I couldn't agree more. That is, to me, that's the backbone of the Trek franchise. That's just so great. So,
well, the other thing is they don't really discuss openly in Star Trek is religion,
right?
Except in DS9 where they're talking about the Bajorans. But there's obviously people of faith in the Star Trek universe. You know, I mean, you had the one episode where they were actually having more of a Catholic wedding. Well, it was interrupted before they actually got married, and one of them died. Or he died, I should say. And there was a religious element to it.
A lot of allegory with that kind of stuff. Absolutely.
And it unlike today where everything has to be in your face. They gotta shove it there, and it's like, okay, now this is what we think, and if you don't think what we think, you're wrong. I prefer the subtlety, the idea that you, the viewer, can decide. You know, we're going to present facts to you. Of course, this is back when they were actually news programs were actually presenting news and not,
the message.
The message, yeah.
Yeah, it is. It was definitely a lot more allegorical, a lot more sort of higher level, and leave a lot more interpretation to the viewers without saying this is how it should go. Whereas if we had, so let's say the next episode of, I don't know, pick a show, let's say Picard or whatever, they go to a planet and that planet is intolerant of the genders. The message would be, well, we have to change them to be tolerant. We wouldn't just try to understand why or how or whatever. So that's what's different. Whereas OG Trek would be a lot more of like, wow, this is really different than what we're used to, isn't it, Captain? You know, it's like that kind of stuff. So
exactly. I mean, they had that one episode in TNG where they went to a planet where they had no gender.
Right.
And it turned out that one of them identified as a woman and was interested in Riker, and then they did the brainwashing thing on her.
Right.
But again, that was not in your face about anything.
Sure. Yeah, and again, a lot more allegorical, a lot more open-minded, and that kind of thing. War Monkey's come in. Hey, War Monkey, how you doing, bud? Great to have you joining in. And you got a topic or any questions that you have for Cap, feel free to throw them up there in the chat, and we'll try to get those included here. We're going to transition away from Trek a little bit. Cap, you haven't made me want to go out and watch any of this stuff on my Paramount account, so just so you know. But that's their fault, not yours. Just my opinion. Just their fault, not yours. Let's talk about some different news stories. I know you cover a lot of stuff, so maybe I'm being redundant with some content you've already covered, and I apologize for that. But
no problem.
You just try to come up with something. So let's talk about one's kind of pet peeve. I'm a comic book nerd. I'm definitely a movie and comic book nerd. I had a friend. This is literally 88 to 89. So that's when I transitioned into collecting seriously. So I'd say 89 to 90. And he was into The Crow. And at this point, we were just like, what? What's The Crow? And back then, you couldn't just get comic books anywhere. Like there might be one shop that have it, the other shop wouldn't have it. And you try to
Right.
order it or you try to pick it up. And so The Crow was actually very obscure. He actually had, the Caliber Presents first appearance of Crow, which I eventually bought off of him and then sadly have parted ways with now because I sure wish I had that thing back.
Oh,
We're going to reboot this franchise. We're going to reboot this again, allegedly. Now, I will say, for someone who's also written for pop culture and done different things, they've been trying to redo The Crow for so long. The names attached, it's just absurd. Like even Mark Wahlberg was attached to this at some point. It's so absurd to think about the names and people. I mean, there's just so many. And here, okay, first off, let me just say, Hollywood Reporter, or if you get your news from a website that's covering a Crow movie reboot, and this is how the article is sort of presented to you. Let me see if I can make this a little bit bigger. They're doing something wrong because you see a picture of the Crow. This is a story about the Crow, and I know this is an actress that's in the Crow. There's nothing about this story, so you're doing something wrong. And if you see that site is so manipulative and biased, okay, they're not covering stuff properly for you. But we're really going to try the Crow with Rupert Sanders, and he's hired Bill Skarsgård to play. He's Pennywise the clown. He's going to play the title character, and he's got I guess that's Twigs. I guess FKA Twigs. He's a British singer and dancer. Sure, don't know. Couldn't have picked her out of a lineup before this article, and that's going to be the love interest, and they're going to be shooting relatively soon, and that's about all we know, and it's the disturbing part was they wrote the role was not significant in the original movie, but sources say that in the reimagining, the part has been reconceived into a co-lead. And I'm like, oh, there we go. Now we're back on message. We're back on message because it's not going to necessarily be entirely about the Crow. She's going to be just as significant, possibly. I was like, oh, no. So sadly, we couldn't get the Crow off the ground, but now this is how we're going to get it off the ground, Cap. Does this remotely interest you when you read the details like that?
No.
Yeah.
No,
I'm
it
like,
doesn't.
What on earth are they? I mean, I cling to the hope that money matters more. And I read this, I think to myself, you guys are out of your flipping minds. I'm supposed to go see a Crow movie because you're propping up a girl named Twigs. And I don't look at a picture of Brandon Lee in the makeup. I don't look at a picture from James Obar's really cool character that he created. Nope. Twigs, who's, I don't know, I didn't see any significant acting cred that she's got to her resume. Bill Skarsgård's been good. Did you like Bill Skarsgård as Pennywise? Did you see that It movie?
No, I haven't seen it yet.
Oh, man.
That's one on my list.
I don't know. I should derail the conversation into my fear of clowns and seeing the It movie. It's really, I'm a disturbed individual. I was scarred during Poltergeist, and I have a dreadful uncomfortableness. I wouldn't say fear. My wife will say fear to tease me. I wouldn't see these movies, and then on a bet, my youngest daughter, we were there to see Addams Family, the cartoon or whatever. I'm like, yeah, it's fine. She saw the poster, and she's like, oh my God, it's scary. I jokingly said, oh, well, I'll go see it if you want to go see it. She said, okay. And I said, well, we'll have to watch the other one so you can know what it's about. I'm like, oh my God, what have I got myself into? He's really pretty good as Pennywise. And it's it's okay. It's fine. But Bill Skarsgård's the problem. He seems like he would make a decent Crow because these guys, they beef up, they pump up, they get muscular enough to be a superhero character. I think Bill would put in the work. I'm not worried about that part. But, oh, man. Don't you just love The Crow, though? Well, that was such a great movie, wasn't it? The original Crow?
Yes.
Yeah, it was so good. Such a tragedy to lose Brandon Lee and be robbed of more material, but man, it was so good. And the fact that we just still piddling around with I couldn't even make it through the sequels. I actually was trying to rewatch them, streaming them again or whatever. I don't know if that's a year ago or whenever it was, and I got into like maybe 20 or 30 minutes into the second one. I'm like, I'm done. It's just terrible. It's just so bad. Oh, how do you cover the news when it's that bad? Do you not, or you just let the chat call it and kind of go from there? I'm more throwing gas on the fire with stories like that. Be
Well,
warned, people. Be warned. The devil's in the details.
see, that's the thing. I used to have a news type show, and I'm bringing that back. I'm just modifying what I did before.
Right.
And yeah, I would comment on it as well. I wouldn't just read what was going on. I would comment, but I would make sure to say, now, this is what it says. This is my opinion. It is not in the article. This is my opinion, and state it. And then go back and say, okay, now I've said my opinion. Now we're going to continue on with what it says.
Yeah, because it's in there. You have to read down, folks. It is. You got the big picture of Twigs. You got introductory nonsense that doesn't really tell you much, just general background stuff. Mm-hmm. Then you get down into this little generalization, and then it's this little comment about her being a co-lead, and it's unclear if the character never quite dies, perhaps returns in some supernatural form, may even be a representation of the crow itself. So it's very ambiguous. Sounds like a bait and switch, gender swap possibly. And Ryan's always here. He's trying to humble me that ideology doesn't care about making money. It uses money to push their agenda. I know, Ryan. I know. Let me have a little bit of hope. Let them get fired because their movies are tanking. They don't have any. I know that not everything can be a loss leader. At some point, they have to pay shareholders and stuff. I know they all think they can cling to ESG and whatever. Sorry, it will eventually catch up to you. It will eventually. So yeah, that was the news that I don't know who talks about what. So I don't care. I care about comic book stuff. So I saw that. That ticked me off to no end that I'm still not going to get a decent Crow movie, and possibly I'm going to get a gender swap in my Crow movie that they basically tell me it's going to happen. They don't even care, do they, Cap? They just tell us. They just tell us.
Well, the funny thing is, it's okay. I liked the believe it or not, I liked Battlestar Galactica, the new one.
Oh, I love the new one. I really do. I know it's blasphemous, but I love both. I'm good. I love it all. I'm good. My wife watched. I talked about this yesterday when we were doing our stream. We were talking about stuff we liked, and I said, yeah, my wife watched it. It had enough girly, romantic, sort of like that kind of drama, and she was hooked too, which is like the best ever for a nerd when your significant other can watch stuff with you and enjoy it. Because now you just have that shared love. Oh, you're in safe territory with me. I'll take my bullets and wounds for that nonsense because I like that show.
See, and there were people that say, "Oh, they gender swapped," and it's like once they dropped her smoking a cigar like Starbuck, it was good. Because when they first started out, Kara was there with the cigar, like it's like, oh please, you're not, whatever. I can't think of his name now.
Yeah, I mean, so she was being played off though as like just being one of the guys, and she was an alcoholic, and she was dealing with like the love interest thing that wasn't interested in her and all of that. So, but it wasn't. I think you're thinking of Kirk Benedict, right? She's not Kirk Benedict, so therefore people were mad. Look, I understand to a certain extent, but that's not the same type of gender swapping that we have now.
No.
Way different. The other men in that show were not just immediately,
it wasn't an all female Viper Force, yeah.
Correct. And they weren't like so dominant, everyone else was just completely insignificant. Apollo still mattered a lot in that show, and there was just a lot of other. First off, that show had like to be a supporting actor on that show gave you better screen time and better quality lines than most shows now. So that show is way underrated in that regard. And this is again,
I agree.
Yeah, it's a person of faith, even with all the religious stuff that's in there, which is not particularly interesting to me. I can disagree with a lot of it, but I still can enjoy the show. So
Hmm.
I don't look at a show that's going to go into, we're going to make Crow, but we're going to hire a female lead and we're just going to call it a co-lead. We're just going to stick it. We're going to tell them right now that's what we're going to do. So I was, yeah. So there's sadly that was the first thing I had. So next up was more like just a nostalgia question, because then I'll get to my, the you can chew on it. The Addams Family or Munsters. Uh, it's like, sometimes we have to choose. Do you like the Addams Family more than the Munsters? You have to pick, because they're doing a Wednesday spinoff. I don't know if you've seen this or not. There's going to be a Wednesday spinoff. I didn't pull up a link. My link is for a tweet that just was casting news, so I don't have the article in front of me. But it's basically MGM. They're going to have it directed by Tim Burton, a horror comedy series focused on Wednesday as she navigates high school. She seeks to develop her psychic abilities as well as solving a mystery that has plagued her family since she was born. We last saw Wednesday when she was a young girl, so a little bit of a time jump here. They have Gwendolyn Christie from Game of Thrones. They have Louis Guzman. He is from Dexter. I know who he is. He's playing Gomez. That's a good casting call. Catherine Zeta-Jones is going to play Morticia. Then other actors and stuff I don't really know. Some comedic stuff being brought in, things of that nature. So mixed feelings. Don't quite know. It's going to Netflix, so it's also like, don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
Can't watch, don't have access to Netflix, so therefore don't care.
Listen, hey man, I understand. There's no judgment of anything. When they crack down on passwords and stuff, I'm going to be shut out of a lot of my stuff, to be perfectly honest. But you have an affinity for Addams Family or Munsters, one over the other, or both, or what are your thoughts on that, for those franchises? Because they're kind of like, they seem like they should be bigger than they are, and we kind of dabble with them, but they never quite take off.
Okay, I like both, but Munsters.
Really?
Definitely.
Awesome. That's great. I'm an Addams Family person more, but again, with you, I like both, but yeah, I'm an Addams Family person more. So go ahead, tell me, why is the Munsters more sacred in your heart? Doesn't even really have to be a reason, Cap. It's completely okay, just because. Sometimes when you grow up on it, sometimes it's just because.
It's something I saw more. I had more draw to it. It's just
okay.
But I liked both. So it was, I mean, if they were on the same channel, so it's like, okay.
You're in good company. Dan Lawless is loving you. Thanks, Dan, for hopping in here and sharing with us. Tell us, Dan, why the Munsters? You could chime in too. First off, Cap, I got to be honest. I completely agree. Partly Addams Family is because more exposure, the catchy song when I'm that young. But just it's almost like those two represent its own subgenre that to me is just dead. And I'd like to see it do well. I saw the story and I want to get into it. I will tell you, folks, everything I've read, I don't see any red flags yet. I don't see any crazy woke stuff. If it wants to be centered, if it's called Wednesday, it wants to center around Wednesday, that's fine. That's all much safer ground than the gender swapping and stuff we were talking about before. So this could be, it can be fun. My issue is I just want it to be lighthearted. I want it to be lighthearted. The lead actress, her name is Jenna Ortega. She was one of the teens that's in Scream. She's kind of the snarky girl that was in this like chick drama called You. She's actually not bad. I can see her playing Wednesday. So that works for me. But again, we don't know the context of the writers and the story and all that, but it could be fun. And I want to see more of that. I want to see more of this genre. Munsters. Dan says, I can relate to Herman. Yeah, we can all relate to Herman. Isn't it great that we have and those two side by side, it's almost like you see your family in some of this stuff, of course, right? Some of it. Oh, yeah. It's so good. It was so good. Yeah. I loved Cousin It and the crazy stuff that would happen. And Herman. Oh man, Herman was the best. And I have such a soft spot for anything Frankenstein. I'm a huge Frankenstein fan. I love anything Frankenstein. So yeah. Good stuff. I don't know. They were talks they were going to do something with Munsters. I didn't really dig and see where we're at with any of that kind of stuff because I haven't heard anything recently.
No.
But yeah, the Addams Family show on Netflix is moving forward. It's called Wednesday, and all I can tell you is I don't see any major red flags in my opinion. Dan says it was always the same joke every episode, but it was still funny. But you know what? That was like, especially from like the '60s through the '80s. It was almost like part of the shtick. It was almost like part of the program. Like, where is this joke? You know it's coming, and things like that. Like, you know, the Three's Company joke, it had this one, and Love Boat had this one, and you had some of these different things, especially in the comedy. So,
Did I do that?
did I? Yeah, but it was like it was part of the brand, and it was part of the. You weren't getting a job at writing a script for Good Times and not making Dynamite jokes. It's not going to happen, right? You're not going to, Different Strokes is not going to have, what you talking about, Willis. It had to be there. It was part of it, and we've heard it 100 times, and we still laugh at 101.
Yep.
Oh, I miss those days. Dan, I bet you miss those days. I know, Cap, you definitely miss those days. We want to laugh. We want to have a good time. We want to support Wednesday. We hope it's good.
I do. I do hope it's good.
It'd be fun to have something good like that. So let me ask you, where are you? Obviously, Trek's in the brand, Trek's in the name, that kind of thing. What do you sort of collect or really get into? Do you have a certain thing that you're into that takes up more space than it probably should?
Well, let's see here. I have my collection of Star Trek books that I have that's taking up. It's too deep on a bookshelf, so there's two rows on each shelf. Then I have my CD collection. I have an eclectic collection of CDs. I have my DVDs and Blu-rays, and then I've started a new collection of ships, Eagle Moss type stuff.
Okay. Right. Okay.
And it's just
is there something that's like it was,
and I do still have my VHS collection.
Awesome physical copies, man. I really kind of backpedaled a little bit off of some physical copies. I don't have any regrets. But I will say that with some of the new stuff that's happened and making some changes over the last few years, now I'm pulling stuff back. Like I just pulled back, I had like extra copies of different versions of Planet of the Apes. I'm like, we're going to pull those back because that's definitely offensive enough. And I can tell you what my red flag was, Cap. It just happened again. Johnny Dangerously. You can't get it on Blu-ray. Can't get it streaming. It's like they want to hide the fact that great comedy even exists.
Really? You can't find it on Blu-ray?
I don't think so. I think we were looking and didn't find it. And I don't know if it's just, maybe it's been like sucked up and it's just like it got out of print and can't get it. But yeah, I found like a bootleg version on YouTube. So I have a little playlist, folks. If you look at my playlist on my page, you'll find this thing called like full movies. And some of them are just things that, it's like a 2 hour this, 2 hour that, or whatever. But I'm pretty sure I'm on eBay even looking and see, but I'm pretty sure they were all DVD, VHS, and I don't think there was a Blu-ray. But yeah, it was non-existent. I was like, oh man. So I'm happy to have a physical copy of stuff like that. And yeah, I pulled back Planet of the Apes. But do you have something that's like a treasure hunt find? Like you're like, oh, I really searched for this. It was on my list. I can tell you the story where I found it, when I found it. Sometimes we can tell people how much we paid.
Oh no, I was actually, there was something that just recently I happened to find, and I was on Amazon, and it's like it's a movie I hadn't seen in years.
Mm-hmm.
Hadn't seen it in years, and I thought, you know what, I'm gonna get it on Blu-ray, and I paid $10 for The Great Escape.
Oh yeah, I love The Great Escape. I love all that Steve McQueen stuff, and yeah.
Okay, and then I bought, and yes, I want to specify the 6 Star Wars movies, the complete saga, episodes 1 through 6, for $17.
Oh my gosh, what a steal! What a steal! I have,
I
I have the originals, the black box, gold box, DVDs, Blu-rays. I have so many copies of the original, and it was like for $17, I'd be almost like, all right, we're gonna slip another one into the shelf just in case of an emergency.
oh yeah.
That's
Well,
so
I've
awesome.
got my VHS copies of Star Wars.
Mhm.
They're sitting on a shelf.
Yeah, I use them as bookends. So I have the black box one on one side and the gold one on the other. They're like bookends. They hold up these books on top of a shelf with some of like my. That's why I like my Timothy Zahn trilogy is, and some of those, Star Wars novels. I use them as bookends. Yeah, it's so fun having those like the physical copies and the treasure hunt and all of that, and I'm trying to find that balance between that and hoarding because we moved away from the city to the woods, so I don't have as much space to work with. But it's great.
Let me put it to you this way:
Mhm.
vertical space.
Yeah,
Don't
I know, I know. That would be my
don't
dream. My dream is to
don't
keep going all the way to the top.
exactly. I was gonna say don't underestimate the value of shelves. Um, may take up wall space, but yeah, you can get a lot of stuff into a bookcase where you can't, put it out otherwise. Oh my gosh. I do have 3 bookcases, by the way. So
I have to be
they're
honest.
full.
I
They're
have
full.
so when my wife she redid we had what we called a Florida room, and she redid it into essentially we called it an entertainment room as the equivalent of a nerdy man cave. I think I had 6 bookshelves, Cap 6. She
I
did it
want to.
for me and let me keep all that stuff as long as I could keep it clutter free. And she actually put in those 6 shelves don't count my 2, the Blockbuster shelves, how they were floor to ceiling.
Uh huh.
I had 2. Well, I had one from Blockbuster, and then I had a custom made one that matched, and they were floor to ceiling with all of the Blu-rays and VHS and all that stuff was on those 2 things. They were in a different room, and she bought like curtains to cover them so that she wouldn't have to look at the eyesore of them being there. But I had that much, and that doesn't even count stuff I had in storage, and I was selling on eBay and everything else. So, yeah, I've had to scale back like you wouldn't even imagine. So it's part of the being the nerd. It's like we all have an illness out of our love, I think. But yeah.
I'm, you're gonna have people that disagree, but I
100%.
am definitely a proponent for the physical media, particularly with what's been done to some of the stuff that's been out.
And you can
You
kind
know.
of selectively know, like, if you don't have a physical copy, you can kind of catch wind of, "Ooh, I need to get that if I don't have a physical
Mm-hmm.
copy." So, for instance, for me, it was like I was literally on the verge of like handing off some of the uh, I don't know, some of the Disney stuff or whatever I had or whatever. But the Toy Story 2 edit came down where they were going to change the after credit scene or whatever. And I'm like, huh, she's not getting that one. I'm going to give it to my daughter because she has little kids. I'm like, yeah, she could just get her own copy. I'm keeping this one. it's already it's already been changed. She's not getting this one. I'll hang on to it. I'll will it to her. I joke with them all the time. I'll will it to them. And then a fight broke out on who was going to get some of my stuff. I'm like, listen, I'm not done with it. You don't get to pick it out now. You got to wait a couple more minutes. Yeah, there's going to be fights over some of the comic books, and I'm like, oh yeah, now they're graded. They're really, really wanting to get their mitts on some of them, I think.
It's like,
But I get it.
over my cold dead body. Then
Yeah,
you can fight over it.
I give some of them. I give some of them for their like Christmas and birthdays and stuff. Because I have one that her husband is into Iron Fist, so every year I get him something Iron Fist. So he's starting to build up a nice little collection of some, bragging rights and that kind of like arena of stuff.
Cool.
Let me ask you. So it's fun because I think you're closer to. We're probably closer in age than I would be to many other YouTubers. I had this thought of, I have like this list of as I start to move forward doing different interviews and things like that. I have like these different things, and we could have, with you, we could have had a Kirk or Picard conversation. We did a little bit of the Addams Family and Munsters and things. I want to touch on something that I think you'd be able to relate to
Okay.
because they don't exist much. They're very rare now. The drive-in.
Oh.
Don't you miss the drive-in
Oh,
experience? Because they're not. Most people are not even
absolutely.
old enough to know what a drive-in is, let alone be at one or have one like what we had when we were young. I don't know how old you are. I don't even want to say, Cap, but now I'm over 50. I can tell you my first. I can't say it's my first drive-in. My most clear vision memory of drive-in was a Disney double feature of some kind. And the part I remember the most is the Shaggy dog is on the big screen, and we have to get out of our car and walk to the concession stand to get food. People are looking at me like, what the heck is he talking about? Though,
Oh
don't
yeah.
you?
Oh yeah. My first clear memory of well, I remember going to the drive-in before, but I don't remember what was on. It was just kind of we'd
Right,
go
right.
there and we'd end up, falling asleep
Yeah.
watching the movie.
Yeah,
But
you'd
the
be sitting through
first
two or three
movie,
movies. Yeah.
yeah, first movie I remembered was oh, what was it? Space 1999.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And that's really the first one I remember uh, at the drive-in. Now I did see. Oh my gosh, I saw several. But then even when I grew up, I would go with family and friends to the drive-in up until about oh 15 years ago. That's really when well I moved physically,
Hmm.
so it wasn't as feasible to go to the drive-in anymore.
Right. Yeah. They're not everywhere. They're just not around. I mean, I've lived pretty much in Tampa now since, before college or right around college. And there was like maybe two, and now there was one, and it's like a flea market during the rest of the week. But as of a couple of years ago, we stopped going and it was like not the same experience anymore because we're in Florida, so you have to run the AC, you're gonna die. They don't have the cool metal box that hangs on your window anymore. It plays through the radio. I'm like, it's just not the same. My wife thinks I'm
No,
crazy. I'm like, can I just get a metal box to hang on my window? It can still play through the radio, but I want my metal box. I want my metal box, Cap.
actually, you could probably find that on
I should just
Amazon or
I should just
eBay.
Oh, you know what? That's so true. I should just look that up. I'm gonna forget if I don't do it right now. Go ahead, keep talking about Space 89. What was your other ADD's kicking in, Cap? You gotta bear with me.
Oh yeah, no, I love going to the drive-in. In fact, there was one I remember going to. It was called Twin Drive-In. It was in Kansas City because that's where I grew up, and they had one screen on each side, so you'd have to walk to the back on each side to get to the concession stand. They also had a play area between the screens, so you could go over and be in the play area and watch another movie, and it's kind of
Hmm.
fun to you. There were a couple of times I actually walked from one screen to another, and it's like, oh, I
Yeah,
like this movie better.
yeah. You just moved around. It was you usually were going to go see two movies, and there were two completely different movies over there. And usually there's like the rated R ones, which were over there. So as you got older, you were like, how do I get over there and not get in trouble? Get back in time. I don't know. Maybe my aunt will take me. She likes that kind of stuff. It's like that kind of negotiation. Oh, I found you were so right. Somehow these things don't pop in my head, and when they do, I don't act. Here's one. Let's see if it'll come up here. So after shipping, it'd be like $40. So not terrible.
No,
Not terrible. So that was one. Then there's a two set, which I think is really what I'm more interested in. So I may have to shop for two sets because this is even better idea. Because then I'd have a pair, and then you're looking at like the bookend thing and stuff again, where I can kind of like work them into the display, work them into the decorations. Yeah, let me get it to come up here. Sorry, I'm bouncing around screens and whatever. So yeah, look at that. I like that. The buttons look good. They clip the cord, but hey, that's okay. Gosh, that takes you back, doesn't it, Cap? That's exactly that was it. That one button not looking too great, but
Oh,
folks,
that
if
could.
you don't know what if you guys don't even know what we're talking about, you would pull up. There'd be this metal pole. There'd be these things hanging there, and you would have to put it on your windshield on your window. You would have to roll your window down. Roll your window down. I said roll, ROLL. Roll your window down. There was no power. Roll it down, so it would be about this far. You'd hang it there, and you would adjust that little knob. And you lost your little knob. That's
Yep.
how you listen to movies. It was the best. It's the best. I figured you'd relate to my drive-in thing.
Oh my god, I love that. I if I had $75, I would probably be bidding on it.
Well, after shipping, it would be more. So I don't know. I'm not even sure this is a good deal.
Uh,
This would actually be close to just over $90. So that's a little bit more than I would want to spend for something else like a decoration, basically. But again, this was a very cursory brain, adding to watch list, just keep an eye on it. That's usually so then usually what I do is I'll kind of plan. I don't know how you folks shop. I'm going to tell you how I shop. Here's Pop's tricks. So what you do is you kind of have an idea of about what you're going to spend or whatever you can afford. And then you kind of go shopping and then you start searching. And then you look at the auctions because usually auctions are your better route to go if there are any because people don't, usually on something like that, it's so obscure you probably aren't up against a lot of bidders. So it's worth your chance. Like this one, there's one that's like 47 and it's missing a button. So I take that back. I'm not sure that's such a great option after all. It doesn't have a little button. You can see the screw, but it doesn't have a button. So there are different ones. You kind of have to play the game a little bit. Patience, patience, patience. That's the trick, man. To get a lot of cool stuff, not break your bank. Not break your bank. Drive-ins. How many drive-in stories that were PG-13 enough to share there, Cap? We were pretty young when we were in the drive-in, so we're probably safe with our stories.
oh yeah. Well, there was one time I well the funny thing is most of the time when I went to the drive-in, like I said, I was with family or friends, and we would end up either taking a grill along and cooking out,
Oh yeah,
or
that's true.
or there was one time I went and I bought. They had the pizza at the drive-in. For whatever reason, it always tasted better at the drive-in than it did at home.
Actually, that couldn't be more true because, and actually, answer almost everything you ate out with always was better somewhere else than home because at home food was still did not catch up. So mama cooking, it was like southern cooking was what was best. Like if you had family that was they could cook fried chicken and pasta, potato salad and mom made that kind of stuff. That grandma made that kind of stuff, but pies and cake, whatever. But when you went out, mm, burger, pizza. Oh, yeah. Hot dog at the ball game. Oh, yeah. Mama didn't make like that.
Mm-mm.
Mm. Ah, Cap, you're going to be to blame when I buy one of these drive-in speakers or a pair. Just going to say, Cap made me do it because they're on here now. Now I'm looking. Some of them still have cables. So there's different sizes. I'm like, ooh, this one. Oh,
Forget
ooh.
hashtag blame Loki. It's hashtag blame
It's blame
Trek.
Cap. It's blame
Blame
Cap. Look at this.
Cap.
This is almost $200. Wait to see how cool this is. It comes with the whole contraption. Look at this thing. It says 50s. Folks, this is what it was like. Look at this thing. It's got the whole shebang. Look at that. The whole contraption about hanging on the window right there, plus a cord. $200. That's exactly what it was like. It's in good shape. Look at that. Buttons looking good. Looks like it's
Wow.
intact. So what you do is you hit watch. Sometimes they'll offer you less. First of all, I'm not going to spend $200 on that thing, but it reminds me that they're out there and I should look.
Mm-hmm.
That is a sweet little relic right there. Cap, we are running up against the hour and a half that I promised you, and we talked a little bit about some different stuff.
The funny thing was when we first started talking about that, I thought,
Yeah.
oh, we'll end up talking maybe 45 minutes and then we'll be done. And it's like, holy crud, it's almost an hour and
Are
a
you
half.
kidding me? We could probably do 3 hours easily. I could easily do Rogan in which is everybody I know thinks that's silly because I have such a shot glass bladder that I usually have to go to the restroom so much. I'm like, no, I could do it because once you start talking nerdy stuff and whatever, time goes by like nothing. And I see these people streaming, and I will say that I'm not sure I'm at the Mahler level. I have to continue to pace myself to work myself up to the 8-hour streams or whatever. But hey, listen, it's fun, and the only reason I don't stay longer, like I said, I'm trying to find my place. Maybe Pops Live on Tuesday will be the place that I land. Maybe it's doing something different nights. I don't know yet. I don't know. I'm just having a good time, and it was good to talk. And folks, again, I hit the thing. Let me hit the button again. Make sure you are subscribing. We were 20 away. 700's a giveaway. You got to be in the game. Make sure you're getting your stuff. Let me check it for myself because I want to see what Cap is at now. Cap is he was closing in on 700, and we'll see. We're gonna get him a couple more. We're gonna do our part. We're gonna get him a couple. Morning Brew. Come again on Friday. This we're on Wednesday. Today I lose my days because my life's kind of crazy. So it is Wednesday, right? Yeah, Wednesday.
Correct.
We are at 680. Okay, 680. We're only 20 away. We need to get to about 710, 720 because you got to give him some buffer because YouTube doesn't like it when we get over milestones. They start freaking out. People disappear for some reason. It's really weird. I see it all the time. So I'm sure Cap's seeing it more than I do.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, it's been great to get to know you. It's been great to chat about some different stuff. Is there anything we missed? Anything about your channel or how you YouTube do your stuff or anything like that you want to throw back out there?
Oh, we'll end up being here another hour if we do that.
That's true. That's true. Probably not what we should do, but we can definitely talk again and dive into some new stuff and whatever. And it was definitely fun to sort of, pull the veil back a little bit and get to know you and talk about all the stuff. So
absolutely. And I sent you a private.
Oh, I see the private chat popped up. Uh-oh. He's shopping for me. See, this is what happens. Oh yeah, there they are. Another set. That's about shipping's not bad. It's about $100. It ends really soon though. See, that's like a tease. That's a tease.
So you can still add it to your watch list.
I am. It's already on there. I already hit it. I have a watch list that's just huge, just massive watch list. I just constantly am adding and deleting stuff off the watch list. And some stuff's on the watch list just because I own one and I kind of want to see what they go for. So I'm in that category too. Yeah, that's a nice pair, nice set. Kind of weird photo. I don't know what the stuff. They have a Yankee candle in the background. For $100, I'm gonna have to throw the Yankee candle in. Give it to my wife. It's lilac blossoms. I'm not sure that's a good flavor for me. I'm not sure I can handle that scent. I'm a little picky.
You could always ask for it.
Yeah, you never know. I probably say so. Take these. They're not. They're a little rough compared to the other ones, but I will say this: the buttons are not. The buttons look great. So you got me thinking because I'm wondering because I have this great. So I moved to like Central Florida, away from the city, closer to the woods. So we have like, you know how away from the the big urban centers are into the rural areas, the flea markets and the discount thrift stuff is like a gold mine because you just have people dumping stuff and they have no idea what certain stuff is. And you know what I mean? It's like, it's just different than the city. It's just law of numbers. So I'm going to have to look for these speakers and maybe at those kind of places too. Put them on my wife's radar screen. They'll just show up at my house because she's so good to me. Yep. Drive in, move. We'll have to, I here's what I will vow. If I get them, which will probably be, over the course of a year, I'll have you back on. We'll celebrate having them.
Awesome.
We'll break them out. So, well, listen, Cap, I can't always catch live, but I'm loving the Morning Brew, loving your content, folks. 680, get him over 7. Check it out. Be a part of things. And listen, man, keep up the good fight, good cause. Ryan saying having a great day. He's going to ditch and bail out too with us. He's been hanging, I think, and he's awesome. He's been really, really good to us, and been good seeing folks in there in the chat tonight. Dan and Sherry and some other folks kind of coming and going, and I appreciate them. I did stream it over on the Facebook page, and my comments still don't even cross. I don't understand why I even bother. So, all right, so we will stop it there. Hang with me for 1 second, Cap.